All right. So can the questions or comments? All right. If no questions or comments, can somebody recap what we talked about? Somebody recap what we talked about last week, please.
We talked
Okay,
about,
so
oh,
oh, you might have to llama.
Salama, go ahead. Then Lovely.
Okay.
okay. So we talked about right efforts, and what sticks with me is the part about meditation and our minds being like a garden. That really stuck with me because my mother had a garden, and so the garden being something that um, there are the things that you want to grow and cultivate. So there are the things that are already there that are growing and that you want to cultivate that are um, good for the garden, let's say, we might say, or right for the garden. Um, and so there's like basically the seeds that you plant. And then there's the things that might come up as well, such as weeds um, that you want to prune. So removing and inputting things into the garden to make that garden a beautiful garden. And so our minds are like that in meditation. In meditation, we gives us the opportunity to do that, to basically look around our garden and look in our within our minds and to see what is there that serves us and what is there that does not serve us and what is there that um, can be destructive for the things that do serve us. Um, so yeah, that really stuck with me, and I feel like that meeting, like coming back full circle, like I've been, with my input in class and in virtual this past week from that actual meeting of last Tuesday, and I feel like that is exactly like what I am actually experiencing right now. Um, as you recall, Instructor Keith, some different things that I was sharing with you all in class yesterday as well as Saturday, and I was really unable to grasp it or put it in words, and I just said I know that I'm in a place of growth because it's really uncomfortable. But today, when I went back over what we did study last week, I felt like, oh, this is exactly what I'm going through. That's what I'm actually experiencing.
Excellent. Yeah, thank you. We appreciate that. Lovely.
Yeah, I think so. I'm kind of cover where I was going with the four parts. She just broke it down to that garden that you spoke of. But yeah, it's pretty much the same thing. Unless you want to touch on the unskillful, the unwholesome qualities like the greed, hatred, and ignorance. And then on the opposing side, you have what is it? Kindness, compassion, and you sympathetic joy.
Yeah, perfect.
Okay.
Anybody else have anything on what we talked about last week?
At the beginning, did anybody mention that skillful and unskillful, skillful part?
Go ahead.
All right, yeah. So you want to start off by striving to remove the unskillful traits that you
Start
have,
with the robot.
and then strive to, and then can y'all hear me now?
Yep, keep talking.
Okay. So you want to strive to take away the unskillful traits, and then you want to make sure the unskillful traits never arise, and then you want to strive to make skillful traits, and then you want to strive to keep those skillful traits in place.
Perfect. Yeah, I think that pretty much covered it outside of our conversational ego. So that's cool. All right, before we get started, anybody else, any other questions, comments, or anything before we get started? All right, no questions or comments. So this week's part of the Eightfold Path, this would be number 7 out of 8, and it's called Right Mindfulness or Right Attention. And this is the second of the third in the meditative path. And so this is what the Buddha actually said about it, and then we'll break it down. So he said, and what is right mindfulness? It is when a mendicant, or basically a monk or a follower of the teachings, meditates by observing an aspect of the body. That's number 1. Keen, aware, and mindful, rid of desire and aversion for the world. They meditate observing an aspect of feelings, mind, principles, keen, aware, and mindful, rid of desire and aversion for the world. This is right mindfulness. All right, so you see it kind of was broken down into 4 pieces. The body, the feelings, the mind, and what we call the dhamma, or the principles. So similar to right effort, but these are called the four foundations of mindfulness, which is the body, the feelings, the mind, and then the principles, or the dharma. So number 1, we'll start with the body. So mindfulness of the body. By asking us to practice mindfulness of the body, the Buddha is reminding us to see the body in the body. So that's like the main crux of mindfulness of the body, to see the body in the body. And I'll elaborate on that. So by these words, he means that we should recognize that the body is not a solid unified thing, but rather a collection of parts. The nails, the teeth, the hair, the skin, the bones, the heart, the lungs, and all other parts. Each is actually a small body that is located in the larger entity that we call the body. So you can see how seeing the body in the body, the big piece is made up of smaller pieces that we call the body. The human body is divided into 32 parts, and we train ourselves to be mindful of each. Moreover, remembering that the body is composed of many parts helps us to see the body, not as my body or as myself, but simply a physical form like all other physical forms. Like all physical forms, the body comes into being, remains present for a time, then passes away. Mindfulness helps us to recognize that the body is impermanent, and thus we know the body as it really is. And this is breaking down that, because remember, the foundation of all of this is the Four Noble Truths. And the Four Noble Truths say that suffering is caused by attachment, but the attachment alone is not necessarily the cause of suffering. The attachment to non-permanent things are what cause the suffering. So as you can see, by recognizing and realizing that the body itself is impermanent, it now starts to free us from that suffering of being attached to this body. Make sense?
Yes, instructor.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
Any questions or comments so far?
I dropped my question in the chat since my background pretty loud.
No worries, I answered you in the chat too. Anybody else questions or comments about that?
Or the title, it was called For, you see, you called it For something. I didn't get that.
Foundations of mindfulness.
Okay.
And the first one is mindfulness of the body. And it further breaks down, all of these are going to break down basically to a similar thing, but the body in the body. So normally we think of the body as one whole piece. And we're saying that the body is actually 32 pieces that make up one whole body. And being mindfulness of those parts allows you to separate from calling this thing as you, as yourself, and being attached to that thing because it's impermanent. So being attached to this, calling this me, when you encounter yourself aging or, injured or whatever, that'll cause suffering if you think that this is you, but it's really not. It's just individual pieces that make the whole or the collective that you call you, which is basically nothing more than just the ego.
Got it.
It makes me think about those four natural enemies.
Oh yeah, definitely. That last one we can't escape.
So then the body
Absolutely.
is basically a physical manifestation of the ego.
You could say that, but it's more so the separate.
Hello?
What'd you say?
Hello?
Yeah, we can hear
I
you.
didn't hear you. Pardon me. I don't know why it went out. Oh, okay.
No worries. Yeah, I was just starting. But basically the body itself, it being separate from the whole is what we call the ego, so to speak. So because you're you and I'm me, that's your ego and that's my ego. Just, we basically had the conversation about it last week, but just that separation from the whole is now your ego.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Anybody else
Got it. I see.
on that one?
The way that it makes sense to me is thinking about if you have an injury, like the kind of example you gave, but like if I hurt my foot, I would be careful or cognizant of using that language like I hurt my foot or I hurt my big toe, as opposed to saying I'm hurt, I'm incapable, I can't do this thing. I mean, that's just I think that's pretty much what you were saying, but to give it context, kind of how we think of like how many inches are in a foot, like those inches would be body parts, and then the body is like the foot. It's just like a unit of measurement, how we measure
Exactly.
who we are.
Yeah, perfect. And that same ideology is going to carry over into the rest of them as well. So you're going to see a theme. So that one was the body in the body. Anybody else have any questions or comments on that one? All right. Well, if no questions or comments, the next one is mindfulness of feeling. So you'll see a similarity. So by asking us to practice mindfulness of feelings, the Buddha is telling us to contemplate the feelings in feelings. These words remind us that, like the body, feelings can be subdivided. There are only 3 feelings. Can anybody tell me what those 3 are? Or have an idea or a guess?
Pain, pleasure, fear.
That's close. I'll tell it to you. Pleasant feelings, unpleasant feelings, and neutral feelings. So you either have feelings that feel good, feelings that feel bad, or feelings that you don't feel any way about. They're just neutral. Each type is one feeling in the mental awareness that we call feeling. At any given moment, we are able to notice one type. When a pleasant feeling is present, neither a painful feeling nor a neutral feeling is present. We regard feelings in this way to help us develop a simple and non-judgmental awareness of what we are experiencing. And that's the big piece about this is the non-judgmental part. Because what we normally do is we feel a feeling and then we go down a rabbit hole of, either negativity or positivity. But the non-judgmental part is basically what Ray said about the body, except now this is the feeling. So instead of, I'm sad, it's more of like there is sadness present or there is a feeling of sadness versus I'm sad or I'm upset or I'm, whatever. It's more of a detached way to, because remember, this is mindfulness. So we are mindful of the body and the parts of the body, and now we are mindful of the feeling. So we are more like an objective observer of those feelings versus being attached to them. And remember again, Four Noble Truths: attachment causes suffering. Seeing a particular feeling as one of many feelings, rather than as my feeling or as a part of me. As we watch each emotion or sensation as it arises, remains present, and passes away, we observe that any feeling is impermanent. Seeing a feeling as an emotion or sensation rather than as my feeling, we recognize these truths. We know feelings as they really are. And feelings as they really are just things that arise and stay for a second and then they go. And we talked about it last week that those emotional states only last 3 to 5 seconds biologically and then they go. So if it lasts longer, it's because you made a conscious decision to keep feeling that thing. So you only experience upset biologically 3 to 5 seconds. After that, it's a conscious decision to hold on to it, to be upset. So now you're choosing to be upset versus just being upset.
About the 3 feelings, the 3 sensations, you said? 3 feelings or 3 sensations?
Yep.
So you said there's pain, pleasure,
Nope. There's pleasant, unpleasant,
pleasant, unpleasant, and
and
neutral.
yep.
Okay. So, and the person who, what about, and you said that none is present when one is like, so when there's unpleasant, you said there's no pleasant or neutral, right?
Right, meaning that you can only experience one at a time.
Okay, so then what about people who need to feel unpleasant feelings to feel some type of pleasure? What is that? Like someone who might need to feel pain to feel pleasure. What's happening then?
End of
Is
the
it
day,
still just existing?
it's
Uh,
pleasure.
what's that?
I said at the end of the day, it's still pleasure.
Ah,
So
okay.
nothing, we don't have any say of what form that is given. So
Mm.
can be, people are masochists. So people, who harm themselves, they get pleasure out of that. So,
Mm.
it's, what we would consider it as pain, but it's still pleasure at the end of the day.
Okay. So then then it's all relative to what that person deems,
Right.
each individual person deems as pleasant or unpleasant or neutral.
Exactly right.
Got it. Got it.
That's a big part of this is that there are no absolutes because a lot of
Mm.
absolutes are only judgments to say it should be or it shouldn't be or this is that and that is this. A lot of
Mm.
it is judgment. A lot of what we say is good or bad or whatever judgment we put on it is only our interpretation of that thing or how that thing should be. Whereas it doesn't exist in reality as such. So a lot of these judgments and things that we put on things are only our interpretation of that.
Got it.
So it's not real in a sense. It's not reality. It's only
Mm.
reality as seen through the eyes of an individual.
Got it. Thank you, instructor.
No problem. Anybody else? Questions or comments?
Just just kind of realizing that attachment comes with suffering, but it's funny because knowing that in the same practice we teach that we're all connected at the end of the day. So having that balance of knowing of how we're connected while also applying detachedness is interesting for sure.
Exactly right. Yeah, and that's the piece. Is that's the the skill in all of this is experiencing fully the present moment, but not being attached to it. And I know it probably seems like a dichotomy or oxymoron, but the other piece of it is that, in experiencing it fully, but yet being detached, it's actually to live in the moment. It's not being in the past, it's not being in the future, but being in the now, which is the only thing that really exists anyway.
Mm, interesting.
Yeah. But also knowing that it's impermanent, which also gives you another incentive to live in that moment fully because you know that it is impermanent and that you'll never get it back.
There is so much joy in knowing that. Just
What specifically?
absorbing those moments. They're perfect. Right there when you're in them. Just love them. In completion. And be done.
Exactly right. Anybody else, questions or comments or anything to add? I think we broke the record on this call too. We got 21 people. Definitely appreciate everybody being here, coming. We only keep growing from here. Anybody else, questions or comments on that?
Was thinking about attachment, and it's to me it doesn't seem like it's so much the attachment because our life is constantly filled with attachments from atomic level to our societies, but it's letting go. We have problems letting go of things, letting go of the way we used to look, letting go of how we used to, old traits we liked about ourselves. We hold on to stuff way too long. And so it's the letting go to me that seems to be a real problem when it comes to attachments. And we just want to freeze everything in permanence and our brain is forever concept that don't really exist as far as we're concerned.
For sure. That's still attachment though. I know that's what you.
I got you.
The two sides of the same coin.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Anybody else? Questions or comments about mindfulness of the body or mindfulness of the feeling? First two. All right. No questions or comments. The next one is mindfulness of the mind. And remember, these are the four foundations of mindfulness. And I will probably say this is my favorite one so far that we've been talking about. And it's so much to this. So basically, I just narrowed it down to this because it makes the most sense, and it's not like a lot of pieces and a long list of things and all of that. So I just kind of kept it easy and surface level, but yet still giving you everything that you need to have to practice right mindfulness. All right. So next is mindfulness of the mind. Although we talk about the mind as if it were a single thing, and remember this is the similarities. Actually, mind or consciousness is a succession of particular instances of mind in mind. So remember we talked about body and body, feelings and feelings. Now this one is mind and mind. So I'm going to start over just to make it flow. Although we talk about the mind as if it were a single thing, actually mind or consciousness is a succession of particular instances of mind in mind. As mindfulness practice teaches us, consciousness arises from moment to moment on the basis of information coming to us from the senses. What we see, hear, smell, taste, and touch that's the external. And then the internal mental states are memories, imaginings, or daydreams. When we look at the mind, we're not looking at just consciousness. The mind alone cannot exist. Only particular states of mind that can appear depending on external or internal conditions. Paying attention to the way each thought arises, remains present, and passes away, we learn to stop the runaway train of one unsatisfactory thought, leading to another and another and another. We gain a bit of detachment and understand that we are not our thoughts in the end. We come to know mind as it really is. So there's a whole lot in there. I'm not sure if everybody caught everything, but go ahead. It seems like someone was about to say something.
Yeah, and this is Peace Instructors Paul. Would you please go back to what you just read regarding mind as it relates to what the senses take in, or consciousness? I think you spoke on consciousness. I'm the reason why is because I always felt like what we perceive is a projection of consciousness. So it's almost like the two have to exist in order to exist.
For sure. That's exactly what was said, was that mind alone cannot exist. You need something to perceive and a perceiver. So you need both in order to exist. So
So it's a chicken and egg then, huh?
exactly right. I know you've heard the koan about if a tree falls in the forest and nobody's around to hear it, does it make a sound? It's
Right.
pretty much the same. I'm hearing some
No, that's me. My bad. I was just saying. Right. Right. I'm listening.
yeah, but yeah. So I know we've all heard that koan. Um, and I'll say it again: if a tree falls in the forest and nobody is there to hear it, does it make a sound? And you know, I've encountered that in training. That's where I first heard it, and we actually had a lengthy discussion about it. But basically, in so many words, the answer is no, because in order for it to make a sound, you need a perceiver to turn those vibrations into sound waves and be captured by the ear in order for it to make a sound. So without a perceiver, there is no sound to be made. And we can also see that in several quantum experiments, in specifically the double slit experiment. And I'm not sure if you guys seen that, but go look it up. But in so many words, um, the experiment, the results are altered when there is a perceiver. So particles behave as waves when nobody is looking, and then when the scientists look, then the particle behaves as a particle. And to me, that's concrete evidence of basically what we just said, that if nobody perceives it, then it's not turned into a wave to be interacted with. It just exists as infinite potential. It's only when there is a perceiver that turns potential into an actual object. Seemed like you had something instructor said.
No, I did not actually.
Or did you have something?
Mine is. I'm still still. I'm still working to make sense of this. It's the mind doesn't exist without having something to perceive. Yet the things we perceive are holographic projections of consciousness.
Right.
I'm
Again, if you can.
Yeah, I'm just gonna have to be quiet and let you keep going because I'm over here. My mind is kind of doing flips right now.
So, not to get too deep in a philosophical rabbit hole, but what would be the point of the mind existing if it didn't have anything to perceive?
Right,
Remember,
right.
the universe wastes no energy. The universe wastes nothing. It's totally efficient in its energy usage. So, what will be the point of existing without perception, without something to perceive?
Your perception determines your.
Say again, Nate, you broke up.
I simply said that your perception determines your reality.
Right, exactly. Anybody else, questions or comments? I know we got some psychologists on the line too, so if y'all got anything to add.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I was gonna say it also speaks to the importance of development of the mind because we can put our own human limitations on something that's infinite. So anything that we experience first, we put infinite potential, a limit on infinite potential. So the more that you develop your mind, the greater.
yeah, excellent point.
I was thinking about the significance of perception and how there's so many different levels to it. Like, I remember my 10th grade art teacher, she's from like Wales, and she didn't understand why, like, she saw the peace sign, like people would take pictures and we would throw up the peace sign, because she said like in the UK that it's offensive when you turn the peace sign outwards towards people. So like thinking about a simple action such as saying like peace and love and you hold up the peace. For us in the US it's like, oh, peace, hippie, like love and all of that. But somewhere else the same two fingers could be the equivalent of like flipping the bird, like flipping somebody off. And it really just depends on like the perception that you're socialized with, and that's why we all experience things so uniquely. And how you give that example of like in the dojo somebody might teach a lesson and then you tell everybody to reteach that lesson, just because of our perception, who we are, how we come to understand the world. It'll look completely different for every single lesson. No matter if you said the same exact words, it would just resonate differently.
Right, exactly. And it was actually an example yesterday in the dojo where somebody gave the right answer, but it was in the wrong context. So, perception is everything in this particular three-dimensional constructed reality.
For me, what comes up is like with the perception and reality thing. I saw a documentary before about pain and how I'm sorry, you're being real rude. Um, about pain and how that is more tied to perception than we think it is. Like we think that it's all physical, like it's a physical reaction, and then we react to those neurotransmitters that tells us that something is going on. But there's a culture overseas where they are taught that getting their hair cut is painful. So when they get their hair cut, they cry like actual tears because it actually hurts them. Like that's their perception of pain. And then they went into how when we're babies, we're almost taught what pain is by our parents, by the looks on their faces when things happen. Like if you fall, then we're the ones that's like, oh my God, are you okay? And things like that. And then we pick up like, oh, okay, well, this must be painful. And that's what it is. So it really does create your reality. And then also I got brought back to the space where in my readings where I was introduced to the concept that the mind is not the I. And it kind of like, it took a long time for me to get that because to me, like the mind was the I, the voice that I hear, my method of thinking, like that was the I that was separate from the body. So I thought that that was the I. So realizing that that was a tool as well. And it's not the only part that's connected to all, and not the only part that's like endless with the universe. So those are the things that kind of came up for me.
Yeah, excellent.
That's awesome. And actually, I got to say this. When I was training in my class, like, the instructor once asked his instructor about, pain. Like, and I'm talking about the chief instructor, our grandmaster. And his instructor basically walked over to a box, grabbed a big nail and shoved it in his arm and said, I feel what I want to feel. Now you get out on the floor.
Wow. Yeah, and he's definitely right in exactly that because he had cancer all over his body. But he said that, I don't feel like dying yet. I got more life to live. And he lived as long as he wanted to.
You can say that again. I mean, that pain, it really is a choice. And it speaks to, the true self, the higher being that we are, because we really are a spiritual manifestation. And like Buddha said, I know I've said this before, but I'm going to say it again. You have a body. You are not a body. You are a spirit. And, this Eightfold Path is taking us straight to that true self, straight to exactly where we need to be. So I'm really glad this has been brought up.
Excellent. Anybody else, questions or comments on mindfulness of the body, feelings, or mind?
I just wanted to make a comment about how you were talking about like how attention affects the particle. Um, it made me think about people witnessing Jesus walking on water. Like the if somebody witnessed that, that would be like so crazy, and like the very act of that would kind of like, I don't know, it would make you either operate from that knowing, or I don't know, like think, if that makes sense.
No, I just get it. And to me, it just kind of reminds me of, I think they call it the 100th monkey syndrome. But like, for example, with Roger Bannister, like, before he actually did it, people thought that it was impossible to run a sub 4 minute mile. And then Ryder Bannister ran a sub 4 minute mile, and then everybody over the whole world started running a sub 4 minute mile. So I get what you're saying is that if you see a thing, it could cause your perception to say that's not real and put you further in a box, or it can say I see that thing done, so I can do it too. So what you perceive kind of affects your reality, your perceived limitations or lack thereof, et cetera, et cetera.
Definitely. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Questions or comments?
I would like to ask Paul if he could restate his question because I didn't really hear what he asked.
Oh, I was. I don't even remember. I'm still. I don't even remember, instructor. I think it just was. I think I was just kind of my noodle was cooked off the mind needing something to perceive in order to be the mind, but I was always under the impression on a quantum level that reality is because of the holographic nature of the mental projection that it is. So it's a chicken and egg thing. So I don't know. Maybe I'm just stumbling over that. I don't even know if I had a question. I can't remember.
No, I think that was it. I think that was it. Something that came to mind, I just wanted to be clear on your question, is that, based on like the Joe Dispenza reading we've been doing, he always states that mind is an action. So it's not necessarily a thing there, it's an action. So it necessarily needs a stimulus. But I don't want to get too far off base. So keep us reined in, Keith, because I don't want to get too far off base with that.
Yeah, all good.
I'll rock with that.
Instructor Keith, if I may, before we move on real quick.
Yep, yep.
Let's see. I have a bit of a note here, and it goes, the interior life is just as important as the exterior life. What we think is as important as what we do. We must not even think about these negative actions or thoughts or emotions. Just to even think it is to have it done.
Yeah, that's excellent. And and in you saying that, you can see how right mindfulness and right thought, they go hand in hand, along with right effort that we talked about last week too. So, just the further importance to show that this whole eightfold path is a wheel, is not a steps. It's not like one goes into the other one, goes into the other one, but it's a wheel. They all are independent yet dependent on one another.
You can't have one without the other.
Right. All right. Anybody else questions or comments?
Yeah, I was gonna say how that speaks to the importance of how temples and higher levels of practice such as the dojo. And selection makes no mistake, because if you expose these extraordinary practices or abilities to an undeveloped mind who can't really comprehend or see themselves doing it, like you and Jalen said, it could push those abilities to in a box in a more untangible means. So it kind of takes away from the practice, and yeah, it's just interesting.
All right. Anybody else? Questions or comments?
If I may, I think that's one of the biggest things I come across as a therapist, to go off of what you said. I think it was Emerson, where once you hit that point, like every client will throw up the wall, and you've hit the wall. And it's one of the biggest areas where I struggle, if like noticing the wall that they've thrown up in front of me, because they're not going to hear what I'm trying to say, and they don't understand it. So it's going right through their head. So one of the biggest things that I thought about to maybe try to explain to Paul how I understood it is like our worldview when we grow up, how we grow up, where we grow up, who influenced our lives. That worldview is basically how we perceive, like the way I perceive the color blue may not be the same way you perceive the color blue. Someone could tell us that this is the color blue, and that's maybe my teacher, my mom taught me, hey, this is blue. And then someone comes around and goes, no, that's green. I don't know what you've been told, but that's green, because they were taught that or they learned it. So that's how I understood how the mind is always different, and how every single one of us has a different perception of everything, and it's always changing, and we have to constantly relearn, unlearn some of the things that we were taught, and so on.
Yeah, excellent. And CJ and Nishani, I wanted you two to meet. I told each of you about each other, but this is the first time we've actually been in the same time and space together. All right. Anybody else before we move on? Did that make sense? I want to make sure everybody got that too. That mindfulness of the mind.
Can we put that in a nutshell?
Yeah. So I guess if I would have to say it in a nutshell, it would be that one, noticing that everything that we perceive is only perceived through our external senses, as well as our experience. So it is incumbent on the individual to know that it is just a perception, and to approach it as such, and not as this is a thing. Because if it is, and somebody says that it's not, it's going to cause you suffering, because now you have a small case of cognitive dissonance, where you have two opposing ideologies in the same mind. So the nutshell is that we see things as a perception, and not be attached to the things that we see, feel, touch, taste, hear, or interpret through our senses.
So I just want to ask, so Paul, when you say you were with the perception that we all view, like everything in front of us is a holographic, it's holographic projection. Like, so then Does that mean to you that, would that mean that the holographic projection sees you as a holographic projection for them?
Just for me,
Yeah.
um, essentially yes. That it's just one consciousness. Like we only have one feeling expressed in five or so ways. We only have there's only one consciousness having, however many billion people there are on the planet, that many experiences. So it's one consciousness having an instructor Keith experience, having a Thalama experience, having a CJ experience, having a Paul experience, so on and so forth. But
Mm,
having however many experiences of sentient existence there are.
okay. I got it. I got that. That clears it up.
In this context, the mind then would be that which considers this particular experience a Paul experience, for example, or a Salama experience, when it's really just one experience happening in an infinite or however many sentient existences there are.
Mm, wow. Okay. I get it.
I was going to say one other thing to add to that, that holographic principle is that if you look at what we call matter, like, tables, chairs, our bodies, whatever else that we see as a tangible physical object is made of what? It's made of atoms, right? And atoms are 99.9999, like, 25 nines, empty space. So if you look at your body and you take out all of the empty space inside of your body, what you call you, can fit on the head of a pin. So that's how much matter you actually are. You are mostly empty space. And so I look at the holographic principle is that what we see or what we deem as matter is really mostly empty space, but the interaction of the different particles causes it to seem solid. So, like, for example, if we give each other a high five, like, we aren't really touching, it's just the electrons, they rotate in such a way that they repel each other. Because, negative and negative repel, and positive repel. So, the electrons orient inside of our body such that it feels like we're actually touching, but we're not. And our eyes see things that look like it's actually solid, but in reality, it's just mostly empty space. So, what that says to me is that we live in a holographic universe because everything is mostly empty space, but it just gives the appearance of matter. It's just enough matter that it's something and not nothing.
Like the Tupac hologram at the concert.
Right.
Let's buy tickets, y'all.
Sentient, free will having hologram. All right, we'll go on to the next one. I think we pretty much exhausted that one. So the last one is mindfulness of the dhammas, Dhammas. And normally this would mean like the Eightfold Path or the teachings of Buddha, because that's called Dhamma as well, or Dharma, depending on if it's Pali or Sanskrit. But in this particular case, it doesn't mean the teachings of Buddha. It just means phenomena, phenomena that's happening in the universe. So, by telling us to practice mindfulness of the dhamma or phenomena, the Buddha is not simply saying that we should be mindful of his teachings, though that is one of the meanings of dhamma. He is also reminding us that the dhamma that we contemplate is within us. The history of the world is full of truth seekers, and Buddha was one of them. Almost all sought truth outside of themselves. Uh, Before he attained enlightenment, the Buddha also searched outside of himself. He was looking for his maker, the cause of his existence, who he called the builder of this house. But he never found what he was looking for. Instead, he discovered that he himself was subject to birth, growth, decay, death, sickness, sorrow, etc., meaning that he was impermanent or temporary. When he looked outside of himself, he saw that everyone else was suffering from these same problems. This recognition helped him to see that no one outside of himself could free him from his suffering. So he began to search within. This inner seeking is known as come and see. Only when he began to search inside did he find the answer. And I'll read a quote of what he actually said. But like this whole thing is kind of like, the crux or the point of all of this whole thing about this whole Eightfold Path and Four Noble Truths and all of that kind of stuff. Then he said, many a birth I wonder in samsara. And samsara just means the cycle of rebirth and death, rebirth and death. Seeking, but not finding a builder of this house. Sorrowful is it to be born again and again and again. O house builder, thou art seen. Thou shalt not build house again. All the rafters are broken. Thy ridge pole is shattered. The mind has attained the unconditioned. So that was his enlightenment experience when he escaped the cycle of samsara, or death and birth and death and birth. And I've been reading the middle length discourses, and a lot of what he said was that in his meditation he saw all of his past lives. So he said, one life, two lives, 100 lives, 1,000 lives. Like he saw all of that, and then only once he had that experience of perceiving those past lives was he able to escape the cycle of birth and death and birth and death and living again and again. And we often liken it to school. So once you pass the test, you don't have to repeat ninth grade again. You move on to the 10th grade or, to college or whatever. But the reason why you keep being born and dying and being born and dying is because you're not getting the lesson. And the lesson is outlined in this Eightfold Path. Questions, comments?
Yeah, that resonates. I've been really chewing on compassion being the shortcut or the cheat code to not having to keep coming back, doing this over and over. Having compassion for another person, and it's something I'm wrestling with. Interacting with people every day or whatever, and get frustrated with them off of something stupid because I'm not able to have compassion and empathy and see the situation from their perspective. Perhaps I'm gonna have to live their life in order to have an understanding of why that person is behaving that way. But I feel like when I am compassionate and empathetic in my action, in my intention, um, in my behaviors and interactions with people, and when I'm empathetic even with myself, that I done shaved off a couple of them lives I might have to live in order to get the lessons. So what you just said resonates with me for that kind of download I got in the meditation a few months ago.
Yeah, for sure. Again, we prefaced it by its phenomena. So, it's the ego, and not saying that it's a bad thing at all, but it's the ego that wants to rationalize why people do what they do. But what we just said with right mindfulness is that it's just phenomena. It's just happenings. It's just occurrences. So we don't have to know anything. It's just they did what they did. And if it caused, one of those unpleasant feelings, we recognize that, we address it, and then we move forward. No need to stay stuck on the past. That's not being in the present. So, yeah.
There is you said it a couple seconds ago. There is one cause for suffering, and that's it.
You
And if
struggle.
anyone,
Yeah, she said you struggle with that.
So, you said that we think about why do people do certain things and they're just occurrences. And so I'll use an example like me having a roommate for the first time or whatever. A lot of stuff that she do, it kind of bothers me as far as like I noticed a lot of selfishness on her end. And me, I always be like, okay, I'm not gonna get mad. I'm not gonna let it bother me because then I'm causing suffrage for myself. But at the same time, I just think like, how do people be selfish, or why do people be selfish, or and then like I always go back and I say, okay, so I know that there was some things that happened in her childhood as to why she is who she is. But at the same time, I still think about like, why do people do certain things? Why, like, it's just kind of like, I always think like it's common sense, or it's just, the natural thing to not be that way. Or for me, it is. And then I kind of struggle with getting past that because it's like then I go to thinking like I could never be like that, or I could never do these certain things, or just be that selfish or be this way because I don't know, I guess it's just not in me. However anybody treat me, or however they make this unpleasant feeling that they give me, I could never act a certain way that I have seen people act or things that people do. And so that is a struggle for me. Like, I don't just see them as occurrences. To me, it's just like, this is who these people are. And it's like, well, why are they like this? Which makes them act this way or do things this way. So I'm kind of struggling with that at the moment.
You can go ahead first.
talking to me.
Yep.
Boy, it was a lot in there, Kimmy. I'm gonna start with again, same thing. Just commented to Paul. Number one is anytime you suffer, the basis of that is attachment. So that's one. Two is debating on where to go with this to keep it very general. Where is your ego in this? Again, not bad or good. Just we know the ego shows up when we are not pretty much when we are not in the moment. I mean,
So
I don't
when
want to go ahead. Yep, good.
I'm sorry. So when you guys responded and said that's the ego, then that's when I started looking at where is my ego in that. And I mean, obviously it's there, but I cannot identify where my ego is showing up in that.
In notions of right or wrong, because there's no such thing. It's almost like you're making her wrong for being who she is, and that's just who she is, and it's based on you're attached to some certain outcome. It should be like this. That's common sense, and the reality is no such thing as common sense.
Okay, I got that.
And that was the we've been talking about perception and all that today, and it's just about your perception and hers, and they're different. That's how it looks.
So I have a question. So is it safe to say that you shouldn't have expectations?
I hesitate when you say shouldn't. I hesitate to say yeah.
Oh, is that a cuss word? Is that a cuss word too?
So you can have them if you want to.
No, I was thinking
Understand
shouldn't. Is that a cuss
understand what
word?
comes with it.
Okay.
Understand what comes with expectations. Expectations are a form of attachment.
Yeah. And so it should and shouldn't.
Hmm.
All of those are personal judgments of what should and shouldn't be, which is attachment. So remember we said that attachment is either wanting something or an aversion to something, meaning you don't want it. But either way, it's still attachment. So
Right, London.
just know that expectations cause suffering because it is attachment of what should or shouldn't be.
Not
Okay,
saying
so
that
I
it's
have it.
easy.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
No, I was just not saying that it's easy to deal with. It just is.
Okay. And so my other question is, or I guess I don't know if it's a question or a statement, but when you continuously tell the universe, I don't like this and I don't like this and I don't want this to happen to me and this is not going to happen to me and I don't accept it, do you kind of bring it to you anyway? Continuously feeding that energy into the universe?
No kind of about it.
I was,
Okay.
I was,
That's what I thought when Kimmy was saying, I just don't understand it. I don't get it. I wouldn't be this way. I couldn't be this way. So maybe that's energy that she's drawing because she's so opposed to it. Maybe I don't know.
I was told once that it's 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 uh it's more serving to ourselves to focus on exactly what we want than what we don't want, because in reality what we don't want does not exist until we think about what we don't want. So when we're thinking, I don't want this, we're bringing it into existence. When we're
That's
thinking,
exactly what I was saying. Yep.
we're not at all thinking about that. Instead, that actual energy of thought is actually on, I want this, which is the opposite of whatever that thing is. But when our energy is focused on actually what we want, like speaking, like if somebody says, I don't want this, instead they're looking at a menu. It's like, why are you reading even down there? If you know you don't eat burgers, why are you even reading that? Just just read the part that you want. Like they pick a you met people like that. They pick up the menu like, I know I don't want this, and you're like, what are you talking about? Like what, you know? So
Yep.
yeah.
This one thing though that I want everybody to get is that the whole nature of wanting subsequently and automatically makes I don't want. Because if I want
Mm,
something, that means I don't want something else. And in those wantings and not wanting, it is still attachment.
mm,
So if you want whatever and you don't get it, then it's going to cause you suffering. So it's best
mm.
to just be in the moment and and not to say that wanting is bad or wrong. Just know that it's attachment and it could possibly cause suffering.
But is wanting attachment in itself, or is it being attached to that want?
Both.
So can you want without having an attachment to it?
I
Can you
think the
want
very
something to
nature of
happen and
wanting is attachment.
say that again?
I said the very nature of wanting is attachment.
Ah, ah.
Yep. So it's basically like we said before, two sides of the same coin.
Mm.
Wanting is on one side and not wanting is on the other side. So either you have a coin or you don't have a coin.
All I hear is that middle way.
Always go back to the middle way.
Absolutely. I want to add to this commentary that um, everything that's in your life, you put it there, no matter what.
I just want to say I wish you could see the face I made when you said that, sir. But thank you very much.
Hey, you and I had a conversation yesterday. I was
This
thinking
is
about that during
exact. I
this,
felt
this
like that
dialogue.
was directed at me, but it's cool. Thank you.
Oh
I know
no,
you're
no, it
cool.
wasn't directed at anyone in particular.
I know. I know.
Yeah.
There was a point in time when my training, when I was talking to the Grand Master, and he told me that everything that's ever happened to me in my life that's negative or bad is one way or another my fault, no matter how I look at it.
This actually stems of a conversation. We were just having this conversation on Saturday, so it's interesting that it's coming back around. But this is exactly what we were talking about. So to take it a step further, I wouldn't use the word fault because fault seems like a negative context, but just recognize and realize that we are responsible for it. That's a different word and that's the word that we used on Saturday is responsibility. Because in taking responsibility, now you take back the power. If something happened to you that you were averse to, that you didn't want to happen, and you dwell on that thing, now you are a victim. But in taking responsibility, now you take the power back. So in me being responsible for this thing, it's my fault, so to speak, but not necessarily a fault, but just being responsible for it, I now take back the power and I'm not a victim to circumstances.
I like that, and that makes perfect sense because that responsibility, we are going to carry the, choices that we make, whether they're glorious or tragic. We live with those, consequences as a result, if you will.
Exactly.
So,
Accountability.
so
Yep.
do we seek, or do we want, or do we desire, or do we, what's another word that could be used in that? Do we want? Do we seek? Do we desire to learn Kinpo? What are we doing? Bring me to the word.
What I have to say is that we came from emptiness, so we will return to emptiness. When you're empty, you are a conduit that can be used in any way at all. So you don't want to hold on to any of those attachments because they are all attachments.
Okay, so what are we doing with Kinpo? I mean, come on, man. That sounds real good, Instructor Nate, but you didn't tell me what we're doing with Kinpo.
Can I add on?
All those unnecessary parts of our being. Like the mantra goes, true growth comes in decrease. So we are actually leaving our baggage behind, and the way we are growing is actually leaving everything behind that we've been grabbing onto, like, oh, this is important. I need this right here. And that's got to be mine too. But, when we actually let go of that baggage, that's when we actually grow. And when you let go of it, it makes room for the discipline to come into you and unfold in ways that you would have never even imagined before. And a lot of times when we have that want, like, I want this or I don't want that, a lot of that's based off of fear that we're not on the right point in our path, the Noble Eightfold path.
Go ahead, Freedom.
Y'all correct me if I'm wrong, but it sounds like, just to answer this question, that what we are just being, that we be in Kimpo class. It's not that you desire to or that you want to. You just be. You just exist. You existing in this space, in this moment, at this time. Just to be. Am I right? Does that sound about right?
No, that sounds like that is it exactly. And our Grand Master talks about that all the time, and how that's like such a hard concept for the Western mind to just be. But that is it right there.
That's it then. That's the word. We be Kinpo. We be practice. We be this call.
Sounds like a definition that I often give all the time.
What's that?
Which is the definition of what?
Meditation.
And guess what the next the 8 in the Eightfold path is? Guess what the 8th one is?
Right meditation.
Exactly. No. Right meditation. Yeah? Yep.
Okay.
See how we just walk right into that one?
Beautiful.
So can I get a
beautiful? We are beautiful. Beautiful.
A nutshell on the fourth one? I don't know if that was done because it was so broad with the phenomena.
I guess we've been
working. I feel like it was skipped over, right? I don't know.
No, Paul asked for a nutshell. We got a nutshell.
Oh, we did?
He asked for a nutshell on right mindfulness, but not right.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yep. So, I mean, it's basically just everything that we've been talking about, just recognizing that everything that happens around us is just phenomena, and that if we really, really want the truth, we must go within and not seek anything outside of us to tell us, what is and what isn't. Because the truth comes from the internal and not the external. So once we turn that experience into an experience, that's where truth is found. Is that a good enough nutshell?
Yeah, that works. Thank you.
When I was growing up in Sunday school, they taught us, I can't remember what her name is, but so in when Lord Buddha was, teaching, there was this lady, and she really was dedicated to wanting to attain enlightenment, and she wanted to learn, and she would meditate for hours and nothing would work. And so she would go to him and she would tell him, I'm going to try to figure out the name next week so I can tell you guys exactly the story. But he gave her a piece of white cloth before he went to And I think you guys have talked about this because they would go from home to home to get food for whatever they were going to eat that day. So before he left, he gave her a piece of cloth and he asked her to sit there and just hold the cloth and use her fingers to run through this white cloth. And it was just a little strip of cloth. And she was so confused and she was like, I don't understand. What do you mean? You just want me to like sit there and touch a piece of cloth? Okay, all right, so I'll meditate on it. So he left and she just sat there doing it over and over again. And then eventually the cloth was dirty and it turned dark and it started getting darker and darker. And that's when she realized this really, and that's what he was trying to say, is that there's really nothing that's ever so pure, and that everything does have this beautiful path that it takes. And sometimes when you touch something for that long of a period, the cleanest of hands will still get this white pure cloth dirty. So I think about that a lot, and the story came to me when you guys were talking about it, because there's always all this confusion with all this stuff that we get, and the Dharma Chakra is like, it's beautiful, and it's supposed to be confusing in the beginning, but if you just sat there and just went through that cloth, and she attained enlightenment right then and there after she understood that lesson, because she taught it to herself, and he didn't do anything to help her, if that makes sense.
Yeah, perfect sense. Thank you. We appreciate that. All right, we're gonna go down the list because we already over time. So, Instructor Aku, did you have anything?
Question. Can you take this whole session from the top for me? Right? Can you do me a quick recap? No, I'm just kidding, man. I have to catch it on the recap. I plugged in as soon as I could.
Okay, yeah, it's all recorded, so it'll be posted.
All right.
So it's just about making time to go back and watch it.
Right. I really just need to listen to it, man. But it's a black hole. This little house is a black hole for internet service. But I'll catch it in due time. No worries. Peace, family.
Peace. Yeah, thank you for joining.
All
Mina,
right.
did you have anything?
Oof.
Bird. Bird, if you're talking, we can't hear you. All right, we'll come back. I think you're having audio problems. CJ, did you have anything? Emerson?
Yeah, it's just all starting to make sense because, kind of what's this, the route we just had with Salama. So you truly attract and are responsible for everything that comes into your existence. And that's why we start off with, right thought, right intentions, and right mindfulness. And we're here now, kind of learning about the mindfulness of the dhammas, because if you truly have, your right intentions and these right thoughts, you know that truth that that you attract everything. So you can then attract to what you truly want. It's not necessarily a desire, but it's kind of like you're just being in this floating of a state you truly want. It's not even a true desire, It's just all things are coming to you off of it's just you, I can't even describe it as a desire or not. It's just truly what you want it to be in your life, So it's not like I'm in Kempo because I desire to want to learn how to, want to be the best fighter in the world. I'm in Kempo because I attracted that some way, somehow through my thoughts and intentions. And I'm just here now, so it just makes a lot of sense.
Excellent. Thank you. Minister Freedom?
bro. What I would say is, firstly, man, I thank you so much, instructor, man, for giving me the opportunity, man, to come in here and listen and add on. It was a lot, man. I heard a lot, I heard a lot of parallels to just teachings that I've been got my foundation. What I think was really prolific was just what you were one of the things that we was going through. Just being almost what I kept trying not to put in my mind was that you're being mind that in a way you're working to be mindless, meaning to exist. And when I say mindless, just it would really almost be the mind that you was taught, a mind you was raised in, to where it's just like coming to knowledge yourself in a way you kind of have to separate from what you thought was thinking and and then emptying and pouring the cup out. Your cup can run it over. So that's one thing that I was just thinking, like, yo, that emptying the mind and separating from this thinking that's not in the present is just being there. You know what I mean? Like throughout another book I was reading, we was going through earlier, that the book of Fire Rings. He say that my man, you never hear about a love life. However, fam died peacefully and in love because he was in love with his craft. He was in love with the space that he was in and the peace that he was in. So it wasn't that he was it just was that he was present in the happiness that he was in. So it just like in the 5%, man, we say that to be is to exist, and that existence is life. So when you be, you are. We all be, because we are living, we are existing, we are in a space. You know, so like you said, to be or to exist. So it ain't that you that all things be, all things exist. However, through consciousness and through knowing that we can be, like you said, present, man. So it was a great lesson. I definitely appreciate you, instructor, and all the rest of the instructors and everybody else for the add-on, man. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Yeah, we appreciate you being here. Thank you. Instructor said, you got anything? Or unless you want to go last.
No, I don't have anything. I think a lot has been said. I don't need to add anything else.
Okay. Jalen?
Uh, no, it was a great conversation. Uh, thank you guys.
Thank you. We appreciate you for being here. Javion?
Hey, peace, everybody. Great class. My understanding really just, the mind is complicated and it'll wander off if you allow it to. So just keeping things, I guess, centered, uh, keeping things simplistic, um, losing, I don't know. Like just the thing with attachment is, I don't know, you just become so comfortable with doing it over a course of your lifetime. It's kind of hard to break away from certain things that you desire, like, or certain things that you don't want to feel. Like you'll feel pain in a moment, but then you just wonder why it occurs, and just realizing that that's only for that moment and that you can release it is kind of refreshing, and looking forward to growing in that. So I appreciate the lesson today.
Yep. Yeah. Just like instructor said that it's not easy. It's not like, it's just going to come overnight. Um, it's definitely a practice. And that's why it's an eightfold path and not a eightfold destination.
Right.
So, Keela?
Not really much to share. I'm just happy that I got to jump in when I did and get the lesson that I have. I got some great notes and just looking at life differently a little bit now. So Just thankful to be here.
We thankful to have you, and that's always our goal, is to change at least one life every call. So thank you for that.
I saw that little afro sticking out the side. I said, who that?
I don't really have anything. Great class per usual. I'm just taking the lessons and learning to apply them in everyday life, literally. Um, just in conversations that I have as well every day. Like I always be like, oh, is that right thought? Is that right speech? Is that right intention? Um, so I appreciate everything that I'm learning here. And like you said, it's hard and it takes practice. It's not going to just show up overnight, but I'm pretty sure that it'll be well worth it in the end. So I'm looking forward to reaching that. And that's all I got.
Sweet. Thank you. Lovely.
This made me think the four foundations of mindfulness are touched on the six senses. That's pretty much where I am with this one, just to sum it up without, over exaggerating the conversation. We talked about a lot, but that's what I got.
Perfect. Yeah, definitely. Thank you for being here. Thank you for sticking with us. Instructor Nate, you got anything?
Yeah, I do. I've been talking about the true self a lot, and that's exactly where this path is taking us. So I want to leave you all with a mantra. And that mantra goes, our self, the inner dwelling intelligence at the center of our being, cannot be swayed by emotion.
Yeah, the people on the virtual call, they got a bonus axiom this week. You might want to say that again. Say it again.
Yeah, repeat that.
Here it is again. Our self, the inner dwelling intelligence at the center of our being, cannot be swayed by emotion.
Nate, can you drop that in the chat?
Yes, I can. Just give me a moment or two.
Okay, perfect. Thanks.
All right, Nishani.
Instructors, can you drop that in our chat after he drops it in your chat?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
I'm truly grateful for having joined this. I've been telling Instructor Keith I learned Buddhism growing up, and it was very much bombarded into my brain as a child, and it took me a very long time to understand that it's not a religion, that it's a philosophy, and where I come from, it's a religion, and they have very strict rules, and everybody's attached, and nobody cares about anybody else but the religion. So it's very difficult to have been a Buddhist growing up, just like every other organized religion, if I honestly compare it. So I told my dad that I in this group and I really wanted to join, and I'm taking, these classes, and they incorporate everything I learned, and they're talking about Pali words that I just coming into my head. I'm like, oh yeah, I know that word. Oh yeah, I know the whole gatha. Can read it off my head in 5 seconds, and I don't know where it was saved to begin with. And my dad's like, oh my goodness, like finally. And I'm like, Dad, you have it wrong. And now I got to teach you. And now we got to learn together, because I'm relearning stuff and I'm remembering stuff that I learned. And you have it very differently to what's actually written and what the actual philosophy is. So thank you very much. I'm very happy to have met you guys and I've heard about you guys. Very blessed. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Yeah, and that's the biggest piece, is that the Buddha himself never wanted this to become a religion. That's the whole the irony of the whole thing. And it's actually anti-religion, because he doesn't want you to believe anything. That's why we end it with his whole method is go and see. Like if you can't experience it yourself, then it's nothing to believe. Like it's an actual path that you go on and do the work and not like believe what anybody says. So it's about self discovery and not, listening to anything that anybody else says. So yeah, we definitely appreciate having you, and you can keep us on track if we say something that's not right. Paul, did you have anything?
Peace, instructors. Thank y'all for giving us this insight and this guidance. I just been sitting here thinking quietly of how much suffering I have been doing recently, and the whys and what how to correct it. I just feel like with every with every level up, that rebound of that ego, that exchange partner, that eternal exchange partner shows up, even more fiercely, she or he is different. So just really contemplating on the suffering I've been doing recently and the whys, listening to the calls and thinking back on past calls. So I just need to be quiet, continue to be quiet, and be inside self for a little while more, and figure some things out, for where I am in this cross section of time in my evolution and my cycle of becoming, and just keep doing the work. It's gonna be what it's gonna be, but I gotta keep showing up and doing it. That's all I'm, just encouraged, just encouraged by this insight that I can, cease or end, my suffering. So I appreciate y'all.
Yeah, thank you. We appreciate you. Rada?
Not much, just expressing gratitude for another bomb class. That's it.
Sweet. Thank you. Ray?
One thing that I've been thinking about since the class, well, firstly, I appreciate all the comments and stuff that people shared. Really put a lot of things into perspective for me. I would say that for a while I have been struggling with like to me, the thin line between passiveness and being present. So like not wanting to make the wrong decision, understanding like, okay, what's the right thought, what's the right action. Before I had these terms in my vocabulary, it was just being overly critical of making decisions for me. Like I didn't want to do the wrong thing, so I ended up doing nothing. And then I was like, okay, I'm just gonna be. And that really wasn't actually being. And this conversation is putting that into a whole new perspective, because it's like it wasn't being present, it was just being passive, not even aware. You just literally were not doing anything and being like, oh, I'm just taking a step back, letting the world guide me, and understanding that there's action that you need to take, that there's a mindset that you should have, that there's so many components to being that I don't even know. It's still fresh, but like that's pretty much where I'm at right now.
Sure, yeah, we got you. And like we said, that's a big piece of this is self-discovery. So seeing how it looks for you, and that's why these concepts and the discipline go so good together, because all of this is about principles, and we give you the principle and then you create out of the principle. So how things look for you is going to be different than how they look for me. But as long as it's principally correct, then it works. So, like for example, when we do grabs, the principle is relax, take an inventory, and strike. But how you or how that expresses itself and manifests itself is going to look different from person to person because everybody has their own idiosyncrasies that they have. And it's the same with this. Like my expression of the principles of the Eightfold Path are going to look different than your expression, but it's still the Eightfold Path. I think you might have froze.
I was just saying thank you.
I'm frozen. Hold on, give me 1 second. All right, I'm back. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can
Yes.
hear you.
All right, yeah, my computer froze. Salama, did you have anything?
Yeah, I just agree with everyone. This was another bomb call. Three things that I'm really taking from this call that really, like everything I take from this that nourishes my growth, but three things that really I needed to hear were freedom, saying that we are just being, reminding me of that we're just being, and instructor um, instructor Nathan saying, emptying ourselves out, so that we can receive this discipline, and also what you said, instructor Keith, about wanting being an attachment in itself. All three of those things really helped, and I feel like for me personally in this moment of my life, this part of my growth, those were three keys for me. Three keys from this conversation for me in particular. So thank you everybody for your input, and yeah, thank you.
Thank you. And life should look different for you this week after this.
Now I got these three keys.
Right. Okay.
Right on.
All right, Terry, close this out. Oh, dang. She did say that. All right. She can't speak. So, yeah, if anybody else, did anybody have anything else to say before we end?
Hear me, Instructor Keith?
I don't want to jump down no long rabbit hole, but is the goal to have no desires in life? Is that what we are seeking to do?
Oh, I'm so happy you're on this call, Instructor T. Cool.
If that take us back to the beginning, we can defer. I can
No,
talk about it
it's not
another
taking
time.
it back to the beginning. It's all good. So just know that.
The goal is to desire no cooked food, brother.
Stop it, Paul.
He gonna beat you up,
Stop it,
Paul.
Paul.
Uh-uh.
No, but the thing is that it's okay to have desires. Just know that suffering comes with that. So that's the thing. It's just that recognition.
Copy that.
Really depends on how much you want to suffer.
And how you're good at suffering, right, Instructor Nathan?
And a lot of us have our own
Right?
preferred suffering too. Like I'm a rock climber and I just love it. A lot of people are like, wow, that hurts and that's crazy. But we all have some way that we prefer to suffer. But it just depends on how much you want to suffer and what kind of suffering you're down for.
Right. Like Kim Po on the floor, on the mat, taking an elbow to the nose.
Exactly.
So one thing that I use when I kind of tell people about like attachment and how it leads to suffering is, as Instructor Keith said, it really is just about awareness. So one thing that I've been taught is that, there is no good or bad. It's just response or stimuli. And that kind of goes back to giving ourselves grace as well. Because sometimes when we learn these things, we're like, well, why do I still have these feelings? Am I not supposed to feel a way about this? Am I not supposed to have expectations? Am I not supposed to this? Am I not supposed to that? And it really is just an awareness about, okay, well, just be aware that attachment is kind of where this pain is coming from, and how are you going to deal with that? What lesson is it that you're supposed to get from that, and not being upset with yourself or not beating yourself up because you're not wrong or you're not bad for it happening. It's stimuli in response. That's it. No good or bad, just stimuli in response. And that's even when we're responding to stimuli from things that are a result of our attachment.
That's mic drop right there.
Right.
Perfect place to finish. Boy, good stuff.
All right. Well, if nobody else has anything, we can call it a night.
I just want to say that mic drop just made me realize that it's that, like she said, being aware of it and not getting mad at yourself or beating yourself up or feeling like it's a bad thing, which is the extra suffering on top of that initial disappointment. Thank you for that, Chanel.
All right. Well, everybody have a good night. I appreciate you all coming, and let's keep growing these calls. We got right meditation next week. So same time, same place.
Thank you. Peace.
Peace out.
Peace.
Next time.